Hello, everybody. It's Dave Neal, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. In this late-breaking story, we have a brand new video up on the Game of Roses podcast where they interview Katie Thurston in her first off-contract interview. What that means is she has finally been released from the grips of Bachelor producers and can go on whatever podcast she wants. Now, she would still get sued if she shared in-depth trade secrets about how her show was edited, but she offers a lot of tea in this conversation and mentions how scared she was after releasing a tweet that ultimately was part of a conversation that got Chris Harrison fired from the show. And talking to Game of Roses, what you learn is that they are masters at what they do. They title this clip, "Welcome to the Pit, Katie Thurston." The pit is the metaphorical merry-go-round of madness known as the Game of Roses community, and they welcome Katie Thurston for their first off-contract interview. Let's listen to the clip where they discuss the tweet. Go check out the full podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and also on YouTube. Leave them a comment, tell them you heard them here first, and go support our fellow creator friends.
Bachelorette. It begins really with a tweet that you sent out, which, you know, you can argue one way or another. It was instrumental in getting Chris Harrison removed from the franchise. Maybe it had no effect, but in my opinion, it was one of the most expert plays that we've ever seen parasocially, because you really changed the trajectory of the entire franchise, not just your season. But the tweet, Lizzie, do you have it? Do you want to read it?
Yeah, it's early March 2021. I stand with other alumni who have expressed that learning and growth require time. I hope that Chris Harrison continues to take more time to step away while sincerely educating himself and dedicating himself to the work. We can all grow and do better with time, and I hope he does. This is after we had a bunch of parasocial plays. First, most of the players from the most recent seasons issued this joint statement on Instagram supporting Rachel Lindsay, denouncing racism. And then several players of color had gone a step further, starting with Ivan Hall, issuing an ultimatum that he wouldn't be comfortable going on Bachelor in Paradise if Chris Harrison was the host. And then Piper James, Serena Pitt joined him. But this tweet came after the shooting of After the Final Rose, so you're already locked in as the crown. And you tweeted this Thursday night, and then Friday, the official Bachelor and Bachelorette Instagram accounts post the same message. Chris Harrison will not be hosting the next season of The Bachelorette.
Mm-hmm.
So sounds about.
Look at the shit-eating grin of Chad and Lizzie here, because they understand this really did change the trajectory of the franchise. And I'm sure we'll get comments from people blaming Katie, or it's like, look, she was put in a very difficult situation as the lead of the show during a time during the height of the Black Lives Matter movement and so many other issues that were going on with the show, that dealing with Chris Harrison's fallout, what was she supposed to do? Do you know, what was she supposed to do?
Oh, right.
What do you think the impact of your tweet was? Do you think it was the reason he is no longer with us?
I mean, there's definitely a series of events that led to decisions being made. I didn't know what was going to happen in terms of the host for my season, but I wanted to make sure my opinion was heard. Yeah, you kind of don't really have a choice, I think. It's a bad look, I think, if your lead is tweeting that and then he still is the host.
I agree.
So it was a very scary move because it's an instant target on my back. I don't know like how deep the friendships go. I mean, he was the host for 20 years.
Yeah.
I certainly wasn't calling for him to be fired. That's a decision that is made behind the scenes. But I certainly was not going to have him be on my season with it just being so fresh, in everyone's minds and hearts. And there was just so much more that needed to be done before he was coming back.
A true nuclear bomb was released here because, what are they to do? They were days away from filming, and the lead of their show takes a stance that probably the majority of people also agreed with. So it wasn't like they weren't going to replace her. Could you imagine if they axed Katie Thurston at that point? She held all of the cards. Now, what they could do was then turn her life into complete hell and give her a bad edit, which I don't think they gave her a bad edit, but for sure she hasn't been invited back, right?
Oh, totally. They couldn't have had him host your season and just ignore everything, be like, I did the work. I read a book or two, and now I'm here to help you find love. That would not have worked in any way. But when you say you wanted your opinion heard, I want to ask you two things about what you just said. When you say you wanted your opinion heard, You could have just called the producer. You sent a fucking tweet.
Discussions
Great
were
question.
had.
Good question.
People knew my opinion behind the scenes. Chris knew my opinion directly.
Yeah.
But that was the last day I had my phone. And so at that point, I still personally did not know who was going to host. I did not know it was Caitlin or Tayshia. I didn't know what plans were had. I just knew who I did not want to host. And I just made sure to put out that tweet as my last Hail Mary of...
That's like farting in an elevator as you get off. You're like, all right, bye, guys.
I don't even know what to call it.
It's an extraordinary tweet. It's, it's arguably changed Bachelor history. And you're in such a vulnerable position. They're about to shoot your season. They could have ripped you apart. That was the risk I took. And I still think I do suffer from the consequences of doing that tweet without permission or talking. Oh, so you didn't get permission, you're saying?
No. It's my social media. I don't need permission to say whatever I want on my social media. And I took a lot of time to structure that tweet.
Yeah.
I made sure to kind of mimic what's already been being said by everybody else. It wasn't a tweet that I did lightly. There was so much thought that went into that.
Yeah.
And
which is why we covered it at the time. This is why we were just like flabbergasted, because it was a wild play, not one in which I necessarily disagree with. What do they say? Like if inaction is, whatever. It's like, what a tough scenario that never existed before, to have to call out the lead of the show when you're not even filming yet. And then all the producers and everyone who works in the show may then think that you're the one who got him fired.
I remember just hitting it and just like shaking because I just knew what that could do and what it has done. I'm now in my opinion, a black sheep in the franchise.
Yes, I think that's a correct opinion.
So,
but that's what I was going to ask you. My second part of it is, when you say that you were afraid it was going to put a target on your back, you mean a target from the producers?
Producers, editing. I don't know the structure behind the scenes. I don't know what I just did to myself, in terms of, am I going to be punished for this?
Did anybody ever talk to you about the tweet?
It definitely wasn't a secret. It was a very loud tweet. Someone said it was a tweet heard around the world. So
yeah.
It was definitely...
At least around the nation.
It was definitely a loud statement.
But did you that night, did producers reach out to you or anything? Or did you just kind of go into your season and here's the new hosts and everybody just kind of ignored it?
There were discussions. I think some people were a little disappointed. But to my defense, no one's communicating with me the plan.
Yeah.
And as you saw in episode 1, I had no idea it was Tayshia and Caitlin.
And I don't think they knew the plan. I think they were trying to ride it out as long as possible. This is my guess. Is that they were ready to bring Chris Harrison in, but they were fighting against the clock, and at the same time they were like, we need to get a replacement in case Chris Harrison's not ready to go, and not because Chris wouldn't be ready to go, but because society wasn't ready for that, because he became the centerpiece of a much larger conversation. Do I think Chris Harrison fell on the sword for the producers in one way or another? Yes, because he's the figurehead. That's like I've said before, that's like firing the press secretary for something the president did. The show was in this position that they put themselves in. He was the figurehead. It's like when we get mad at the CEO when a company's doing something bad, and it's like, you realize the deep state that exists within this area hasn't changed at all.
I would have had comfort knowing there was a game plan, but in the moment, I personally just felt very out of the loop and very pushed against a wall, and that was just my defense of I've expressed what I want and everyone knows it. So however that plays out on night 1, I don't know, but at least people know where I stood.
Yeah. And whoever is standing next to you, it's going to be implied that you're okay with it, whoever it is. So, no, I admire the tweet. I think it was great. I
do too. We talk all the time on Game of Roses.
I personally struggle with how I feel about it. I believe it takes an incredible amount of courage to do what Katie Thurston did. And for the most part, that's implied, or that's at least led to my respect for Katie. I don't know what I would do in that position. I truly don't. And that's why I can't judge her for it. I've said this all along. I imagine there is just this swell of of people in the DM saying, you're not going to be okay with this, right? Because that's how we work as community and as society, through shared endorsement of things or endorsement against things. And there are so many people discussing this. So if anyone has the simple comment, oh, Chris was wronged or this or that, there's so many bigger things. Like Chris was a part of the producers not really doing much to change the culture that was pretty much like a white presenting show that had token minority, like contestants that never really stood much of a shot. He didn't do much to change that. So when they flew too close to the sun and the unfortunate incidents that rose up to the Black Lives Matter movement, where was the show? Where was the goodwill? None of that existed. And because of that, it's not necessarily about looking at what Chris Harrison did or said in discussing it all with Rachel Lindsay. It was past the boiling point at that point in time. And because of that, I think Katie did what she had to do, which was take a stance, something the producers hadn't done yet. And for that, she controlled her destiny, a destiny which may not include Bachelor, because she is, as they said, a black sheep from the community, but a destiny that at least allows her to move forward with her life, knowing her convictions. And are we able to do that? I'll be honest. I don't know if I would have done that. I don't know if I would have had that courage to step out there and do that. Let me know what you guys think about this. It's a fascinating story. Nobody has the conversation better than Game of Roses podcast and Katie Thurston. What a great combination they are. I'm going to be mailing this book out to somebody here on my social media. I already picked a winner. I said I had an extra copy, so I'm going to give out my copy of How to Win the Bachelor. Go check it out. The Secret to Finding Love and Fame on America's favorite reality show. I'll be talking with Game of Roses pretty soon, so make sure to join the Bachelor Rush Hour podcast for that interview. I got a lot of big things coming up. You're going to like it. Hit the like button. For God's sakes, I'm making content on a Friday afternoon. I should go be eating pizza and watching, football or something. But either way, A+, great job to Katie Thurston here in that conversation. Go check out the full thing. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye, everybody.